Caleb stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie with the arrogant precision of a man who thought he owned the world. He smirked at his reflection, talking about the promotion, the bonus, and the lavish vacation he was taking us on. He didn't know I had already spoken to the foreclosure agent. He didn't know his mother's secret savings account was frozen. He was preening like a king, completely unaware that his castle was already burning down around him. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. The sound of silverware scraping against china felt loud enough to crack my skull. I sat at the head of the table, though it certainly didn't feel like a position of power. It felt more like the witness stand. I looked down at the roast chicken I had spent 3 hours preparing, the rosemary crisping perfectly on the skin, the potatoes roasted in duck fat just the way Caleb liked them. I had paid for every single ingredient with the emergency credit card I had sworn not to touch, but the silence in the room told me it wasn't enough. It was never enough. Caleb cleared his throat, a sound that instantly made my stomach tighten. I knew that sound. It was the prelude to a lecture. I stared at my fork, tracing the floral pattern on the handle with my thumb, bracing myself for impact. I wondered what it would be this time. The electricity bill? The fact that I bought the wrong brand of toothpaste? My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I tried to swallow a piece of potato, but it felt like dry cement in my throat. "This chicken is a bit dry," Caleb said, his voice smooth and casual, as if he were commenting on the weather. I froze. I wanted to scream that I had basted it every 15 minutes. I wanted to throw the entire bird at the wall. Instead, I felt that familiar wave of inadequacy wash over me, drowning out my rational thoughts. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had gotten distracted. Maybe I really couldn't do anything right. I forced a smile that felt like it was cracking the skin on my face. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice small and pathetic. I must have left it in too long. Diane, my mother-in-law, let out a soft, sympathetic sigh from across the table. She reached out and patted my hand, her skin cool and dry like parchment paper. Her touch made my skin crawl, but I didn't pull away. That would be rude. That would be ungrateful. "Oh, honey, don't worry about it," she said, her tone dripping with that sugary sweetness that always left a bitter aftertaste. "We know you're not a natural in the kitchen. It's sweet that you try so hard, even when you're so tired from whatever it is you do all day." The insult landed softly, wrapped in concern. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. Whatever I do all day. I worked 40 hours a week as a paralegal. I paid the mortgage. I paid her car insurance. I wanted to list every single bill I had covered in the last 6 months, to slam the bank statements on the table and make them eat the paper instead of the chicken. But I didn't. I couldn't. If I did, Caleb would give me that look, the one that said I was being hysterical, that I was obsessed with money, that I didn't understand how a family worked. "I just wanted to make something special," I mumbled, staring at my plate. Caleb took a sip of wine, a bottle I had bought for our anniversary that he had opened without asking, and sighed. "We appreciate the effort, Maya, we really do. But maybe next time let's just order in. It saves you the stress, and honestly, it's probably cheaper than buying all these fancy ingredients that just go to waste." Cheaper. The word echoed in my head. I looked at the roast chicken. It had cost me $12. Ordering sushi for 3 people would cost $80. The math didn't work. It never worked. But arguing math with Caleb was like trying to explain color to a dog. He lived in a world where his reality was the only one that mattered. I nodded, feeling a heavy stone of resentment settle in my gut. "Okay, next time we'll order in." Diane beamed at me. "That's a good girl. You need to learn to relax, Maya. You're always so wound up. It's bad for your complexion. You're starting to get those deep lines around your mouth." I instinctively reached up to touch my face, my fingers brushing against my skin. Was I aging faster? Was the stress literally carving itself into my face? I felt a sudden urge to run to the bathroom and check the mirror, to inspect every pore, every wrinkle. Panic fluttered in my chest. If I looked old, Caleb would leave. That was the fear that always lurked in the back of my mind, fed by his subtle comments about the young interns at his office. "I'll try to relax," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Caleb smiled, that charming, boyish smile that had made me fall in love with him 5 years ago. "That's my girl. Now pass the salt. This needs a lot of help." The garage was cold, a stark contrast to the stifling heat of the kitchen. I stood there in my pajamas staring at the dashboard of Caleb's sedan. The blue light of the odometer seemed to mock me in the darkness. I had come out to get the recycling bin, but something had pulled me toward the car. A feeling, a vibration in the air. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was just looking for reasons to be angry because of the chicken comment. But the numbers didn't lie. I remembered looking at the odometer 2 days ago when I moved his car to sweep the garage. It had read 42,310 miles. I remembered it because the numbers 310 were my childhood area code. It was a stupid mnemonic device, but my brain latched onto patterns like a lifeline. Now the dashboard glowed with a different number, 42,560. I did the mental math, my brain churning sluggishly. That was a difference of 250 miles. 250 miles in 2 days. Caleb worked 6 miles from our house. He had told me he was working late at the office both nights. I felt a cold prickle of sweat on the back of my neck. Where could he have gone? A client meeting? A site visit? My mind started racing, spinning out scenarios. Maybe he had to drive to the satellite office in the city. That was about 50 miles away. But back and forth twice would only be 200 miles. And why wouldn't he tell me? He usually complained for hours if he had to sit in traffic. I opened the driver's side door and sat in the leather seat. It smelled like him, sandalwood and expensive tobacco. But underneath that, there was something else. A faint, floral sweetness. Vanilla? Jasmine? I leaned in, sniffing the air like a bloodhound. I felt ridiculous. I felt like a crazy, jealous wife from a bad movie. But the scent was there, clinging to the fabric of the seatbelt. I don't wear vanilla. I hate vanilla. It reminds me of cheap air fresheners. I sat there in the dark, my hands gripping the steering wheel. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Stop it," I told myself. "You're spiraling. It could be anything. Maybe he gave a ride to a female colleague. Maybe he spilled a latte. Maybe the car wash used a new scent spray." But the doubt was a seed, and it had already taken root. I looked around the car, searching for something, anything. I opened the center console. Gum wrappers, a charging cable, a handful of loose change, nothing incriminating. I checked the glove compartment, registration, insurance, the manual. I was about to close it when I saw a small, crumpled piece of white paper tucked way in the back behind the tire gauge. My fingers trembled as I reached for it. It was a receipt. I unfolded it, squinting in the dim light of the garage door opener. It was from a gas station, not the one near our house and not the one near his office. It was from a station in a town called Riverton. Riverton was 2 hours north. Why would he be in Riverton? I checked the date. It was from yesterday. Yesterday, when he said he was in meetings all day. My breath hitched. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under the car. He lied. He definitely lied. But why? Was he seeing someone? Was he gambling? Riverton had a casino. The thought made me sick. We couldn't afford a gambling addiction. We could barely afford the mortgage. I shoved the receipt into my pajama pocket as I heard the door from the house open. "Maya?" Caleb's voice echoed in the garage. "What are you doing out here?" I jumped, banging my knee against the steering column. Pain shot up my leg, sharp and blinding. I scrambled out of the car, trying to look casual, trying to look like a wife who wasn't currently investigating her husband. I dropped an earring. I lied. My voice sounded high and brittle. I thought maybe it fell when I was getting groceries out yesterday. Caleb stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the light from the mudroom. He crossed his arms. "You're looking for an earring in my car? In the dark?" I forced a laugh. It sounded maniacal. "I know, silly, right? I panicked. It was the pearl one you gave me." He walked over to me, his steps slow and deliberate. He stopped inches from me, looking down. "You need to be more careful, Maya. You're always losing things. It's irresponsible." I nodded quickly, my head bobbing like a bobblehead doll. "I know. I'm sorry. I'll look more carefully in the daylight." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers felt hot against my cold skin. "Come inside. Mom's making tea. She wants to talk to you about the garden." I let him lead me back inside, the receipt burning a hole in my pocket. He didn't know I had it. He didn't know I knew he was in Riverton, but I knew. And for the first time in years, the fear in my stomach wasn't about losing him. It was about what I would find if I kept digging. The living room was suffocatingly warm. Diane liked the thermostat set to tropical, claiming her circulation was poor, even though I had seen her walking briskly in the dead of winter with nothing but a light sweater. She sat on the floral armchair, a queen on her throne, surrounded by several plastic shopping bags. "Come sit, Maya," she beckoned, patting the spot on the sofa next to the bags. "I was going through my closet today, and I found some things I thought you might like." I sat down tentatively. My knee was still throbbing from where I banged it in the car. "Thank you, Diane. That's very thoughtful." She smiled, a tight pursing of her lips. "Well, I know things are tight for you two right now. With Caleb working so hard to build his future, I thought I could help you out with your wardrobe. So you don't have to spend money on clothes." She reached into the first bag and pulled out a beige sweater. It was shapeless, made of some itchy synthetic blend, and had a noticeable snag on the collar. It looked like something a potato would wear to a funeral. "This is a classic piece," she said, holding it up against her own chest. "It washes very well. I thought the color would be very forgiving on you." Forgiving. Code for washing out my pale skin. Code for hiding the weight she thought I needed to lose. I reached out and took the sweater. The fabric felt rough against my fingertips. "It's lovely," I lied. "Thank you." She pulled out a pair of trousers next. They were pleated, gray, elastic waist. These were practically brand new. I only wore them once to a bingo night, but they were a bit too snug for me. They should fit you perfectly. I stared at the pants. Diane was 3 sizes larger than me. If these were too snug on her, they would fall off me. But saying that would be an insult. Saying that would imply I was thinner than her, which was a crime in this house. "I'll have to try them on," I said, placing them on the pile of beige sadness. She kept pulling things out. A blouse with a coffee stain near the hem. A scarf that smelled like mothballs. Each item was presented as a precious gift, a charitable donation to the poor. Unfortunate daughter-in-law. I felt a mixture of humiliation and rage bubbling in my chest. I had a job. I could buy my own clothes. But every time I bought something new, Caleb would ask how much it cost, and Diane would make a comment about fast fashion and wastefulness. So I wore my old clothes until they fell apart, and now, apparently, I was expected to wear her cast-offs. "And look at this," she chirped, pulling a final item from a separate, smaller bag. This wasn't a hand-me-down. It was a brand-new silk scarf, vibrant blue with gold threading. The price tag was still on it, $150. I gasped involuntarily. It was beautiful. For a split second, I thought she had bought it for me. A peace offering. A genuine gift. "Oh, Diane," I started, reaching for it. She pulled it back sharply. "Oh, no, dear. This isn't for you. I just wanted to show you what I bought for myself today. Isn't it gorgeous? I found it at that boutique downtown. I thought it would go perfectly with my navy coat." My hand froze in midair. I felt like she had slapped me. She just gave me a bag of her trash because money is tight, and then flaunted a $150 scarf she bought for herself? It's stunning, I managed to say. My voice felt thick. I thought so too, she said, draping it around her neck and admiring herself in the hallway mirror. You know, Maya, if you were a bit more careful with the grocery budget, maybe you could afford nice things like this too. It's all about priorities. Priorities. My priority was paying the electricity bill so she could keep the house at 80 degrees. My priority was paying for the organic vitamins she insisted on taking. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab the bag of old clothes and dump it on her head, but I sat there. I sat there and smiled and folded the beige sweater on my lap. You're right, Diane, I said. I really need to be better with the budget. She patted my cheek as she walked past me. I know you're trying, sweetie. Not everyone has a head for finance. That's why you're lucky to have Caleb. Later that night, Caleb was in the shower. I could hear the water running, the pipes groaning in the walls. I was in the bedroom, supposedly reading, but my eyes were scanning the room. The receipt from the garage was burning a hole in my consciousness, but I had hidden it inside a hollowed-out book on the bottom shelf, my secret stash spot. His suit jacket was draped over the chair in the corner. He had worn it today for a big presentation. I stared at it. I shouldn't look. If he caught me, it would be World War III. He valued his privacy. He called it mutual respect. I called it hiding things. But I had never said that out loud. I got up, my bare feet silent on the carpet. I moved toward the chair, feeling like a thief in my own bedroom. The shower water was still running loud and steady. I had maybe 5 minutes. I reached into the inner breast pocket. Nothing. I checked the side pockets. A few breath mints, a business card for a steakhouse. I checked the back pocket of the trousers hanging underneath. My fingers brushed against something stiff. I pulled it out. It was a small velvet pouch, black. The kind jewelry comes in. My heart stopped. I held it in my palm, feeling the weight of it. Was this for me? Was our anniversary coming up? No, that was months away. My birthday? That was last week, and he had given me a vacuum cleaner. Hope flared in my chest, bright and painful. Maybe he felt bad about the vacuum. Maybe he realized he had been distant. Maybe this was an apology gift. I opened the pouch carefully. Inside lay a delicate silver bracelet with a charm shaped like a hummingbird. I stared at it. It was beautiful. But there was a problem. I hate birds. I have a phobia of birds. I was attacked by a goose when I was 6. Caleb knows this. We have joked about it. He has literally chased pigeons away from me in the park. Why would he buy me a hummingbird bracelet? I looked closer at the charm. It had tiny emeralds for eyes. Emerald is the birthstone for May. My birthday is in October. The room seemed to tilt. This wasn't for me. I checked inside the pouch again. There was a folded slip of paper, a receipt. I unfolded it, my hands shaking so bad I almost dropped it. The date was today. The time was noon. The store was Gilded Cage Jewelers in the city. The price was $350. $350. We had fought last week because I spent $40 on a haircut. He had given me a 20-minute lecture on fiscal responsibility. He had made me cancel my gym membership to save $30 a month. And here was a $350 bracelet for a woman who liked birds and was born in May. The shower turned off. Panic seized me. I shoved the bracelet back into the pouch. I shoved the pouch back into his pants pocket. I scrambled back to the bed and grabbed my book, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The bathroom door opened. Caleb walked out, a towel wrapped around his waist, steam billowing around him. He looked fresh, clean, innocent. "Hey," he said, rubbing his hair with a smaller towel. "You okay? You look pale." I looked up at him over the top of my book. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was going to throw up. "I'm fine," I squeaked. "Just really into this chapter." He smiled, oblivious. "Good. Don't stay up too late. We have to be up early for Mom's doctor appointment." He dropped the towel and started getting dressed. I watched him put on the pants that held the evidence of his betrayal. I watched him zip up the fly, covering the lie. He whistled a little tune. I realized then that I didn't know this man. I slept next to him, I cooked for him, I washed his clothes, but I didn't know him at all. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the emerald eyes of that hummingbird staring at me. I tossed and turned until Caleb grumbled in his sleep and rolled over. By morning, I was a wreck. My eyes were puffy, my head pounded. I sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of black coffee, watching Caleb eat his eggs. He seemed perfectly fine, happy even. I have to ask, I thought. I have to know. Caleb, I started, my voice trembling. He didn't look up from his phone. I was looking for a pen in your jacket last night, I lied. The lie tasted like ash, and I found a pouch. His hand stopped moving. The fork hovered halfway to his mouth. The silence in the kitchen stretched, thick and heavy. He slowly put the fork down. He turned his phone over and placed it on the table. He looked at me, his eyes cold and hard. You were going through my pockets? I shrank back. I just needed a pen. I saw the pouch. Caleb, who is it for? He stared at me for a long moment. I expected him to yell. I expected him to deny it. Instead, he sighed. A long, disappointed sigh. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the pouch. He tossed it onto the table between us. Go ahead, he said. Open it. I stared at the black velvet. I saw it already. It's a hummingbird. He nodded slowly. Yes, it is. Do you know why? I shook my head, tears prickling my eyes. No. I hate birds, Caleb. You know that. He let out a short, humorless laugh. Exactly. You hate birds. You hate everything that flies. You're afraid of everything, Maya. I bought this because I wanted to help you face your fear. I thought it would be a symbolic gesture, a way to say, look, it's just jewelry, it can't hurt you. I thought it was thoughtful. I was going to give it to you tonight at dinner. My mouth fell open. He bought it? To help me? And the emeralds? I whispered. My birthday is October. He rolled his eyes. They aren't emeralds, Maya. They're green glass. Green is your favorite color. Or at least it used to be before you decided you only liked beige and gray. I felt the ground shift. Was he telling the truth? It sounded plausible. Twisted, but plausible. Caleb was always trying to fix me. This fit his pattern. But $350? I asked, my voice weak. He slammed his hand on the table. I flinched. Is that all you care about? The money? I work my ass off, Maya. I wanted to do something nice for you, something to help you grow. And you turn it into an interrogation. You violate my privacy, you snoop through my things, and then you attack me over the price tag? Guilt washed over me, hot and suffocating. He was right. I was snooping. I was ungrateful. He was trying to do a nice thing in his own weird way, and I had ruined it. I'm sorry, I stammered. I didn't mean... I just thought... You thought I was cheating, he finished, his voice dripping with disgust. That's where your mind always goes. You're so insecure, it's pathetic. He stood up, grabbing his jacket. I'm going to work. Don't expect me for dinner. I need some space. He stormed out. The front door slammed, shaking the pictures on the wall. I sat there alone in the kitchen, staring at the hummingbird bracelet. I picked it up. The green eyes seemed to mock me. I felt like the worst wife in the world. I had accused him of betrayal when he was just trying to be Caleb. But deep down, a tiny voice whispered, he's lying. I silenced it. I had to. Because if he was lying, then my entire life was a lie, and I wasn't ready to face that yet. The text came at noon. Mom is upset. She knows we fought. Fix it. That was it. No, I love you. No, I'm sorry I yelled. Just a command. Fix it. I knew what that meant. It meant I had to go grovel to Diane. She lived in the in-law suite attached to the back of the house, but the emotional distance between us was an ocean. I knocked on her door. "Come in," she chirped. I walked in. She was sitting on her sofa, watching a soap opera, sipping herbal tea. She looked at me with that same pitying expression she had used at dinner. "Caleb called me," she said, pausing the TV. "He sounded very distressed, Maya." I stood in the middle of the room, feeling like a naughty schoolchild. "We had a misunderstanding," I said, looking at the floor. "A misunderstanding?" She raised an eyebrow. "He said you accused him of having an affair because he bought you a gift." Put like that, it sounded insane. I felt the shame burn my cheeks. I overreacted. I found the receipt and I panicked. Diane sighed and patted the cushion next to her. "Sit down, dear." I sat. She took my hand in hers. "Maya, you have to understand men like Caleb. He is a provider. He is a king. He needs a queen, not a detective. When you question him, you emasculate him. You push him away." I bit my tongue. I wanted to say that kings shouldn't lie about mileage or hide receipts. I wanted to say that trust goes both ways, but I knew the script. "I know, Diane, I messed up." "You certainly did." She took a sip of tea. "He works so hard for us, for you, and you repay him with suspicion. It hurts me to see him so upset. He has so much pressure at work, and then he comes home to this." She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You know, his father was like that, always buying me little trinkets. I never asked where the money came from. I just said thank you. That's the secret to a happy marriage, Maya. Gratitude. Blind gratitude. Blind gratitude." The phrase made my stomach churn. She was telling me to shut up and take whatever scraps he threw me. "I understand," I said, my voice hollow. "Good." She smiled. "Now, I think you should make it up to him. He loves that beef stroganoff you make, the expensive cut of beef. Go to the butcher, buy a nice bottle of wine, surprise him, show him you appreciate him." "But the budget," I started. "Oh, forget the budget for one night. This is about saving your marriage. Use the emergency card if you have to. Just fix it." I nodded. "Okay, I'll make the stroganoff." She squeezed my hand. "That's a good girl. Now, rub my feet before you go. My arthritis is acting up." I spent the next 20 minutes kneading her cold, bony feet, listening to her talk about how lucky I was that Caleb hadn't left me yet. I nodded. I smiled. I said, "Yes, Diane." But as I rubbed her heel, my mind drifted back to the hummingbird, to the green eyes, to the mileage, gratitude, blind gratitude. I walked out of her room an hour later, exhausted and drained. I went to the kitchen and pulled out the recipe for stroganoff. I looked at the list of ingredients: sirloin steak, mushrooms, heavy cream. I grabbed my purse and keys. I would go to the store. I would buy the steak. I would play the part of the repentant wife. But first, I had a phone call to make. I got into my car and drove down the street, parking around the corner where Diane couldn't see me from her window. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking again. I typed Gilded Cage Jewelers into the browser. I found the number. I hit call. "Hello, Gilded Cage. How may I help you?" A polite female voice answered. "Hi," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. My husband bought a bracelet there yesterday. A hummingbird charm with green eyes. Yes, the custom piece. I remember it. Is there a problem?" Custom piece, my heart hammered. "No problem, He told me the eyes were green glass, but they look so real. I was just wondering, for insurance purposes." There was a pause, then a light laugh. "Oh, honey, no. Those are genuine Colombian emeralds, and the charm is solid platinum. That's why it was a custom order." My blood ran cold. Platinum, emeralds, and was it designed for a specific person? I asked, holding my breath. "Well, the engraving on the back usually indicates that." "Engraving?" I hadn't looked at the back. "Yes," the voice continued. "It says, 'For my Birdie, always.'" Birdie. I hung up the phone. I didn't have a nickname. He called me Maya, or Babe, when he wanted something. Birdie. I stared at the steering wheel. He had looked me in the eye this morning and lied. He had made me feel crazy. He had made me apologize. He had sent me to his mother to be lectured on gratitude for a bracelet he bought for another woman. The tears didn't come. Instead, a cold, hard rage settled in my chest. It wasn't the hot, explosive anger of the night before. This was different. This was quiet. This was dangerous. He wanted stroganoff? Fine. I would make him the best damn stroganoff he had ever tasted. I would smile. I would be the perfect wife. And while he was eating, I would start planning his funeral. The smell of searing beef filled the kitchen, a rich, iron-heavy scent that usually made my mouth water. Tonight it made my stomach turn. I stood over the stove, stirring the mushrooms into the sauce, watching them darken and shrink. Just like me, I thought. Shrinking until I was nothing but a flavor enhancer for Caleb's life. I heard the garage door rumble open. The vibration traveled up through the floorboards and into my bare feet. He was home. Panic flared, hot and sudden. I had to be perfect. I had to be the repentant wife. I checked my reflection in the microwave door. My hair was brushed, my apron was clean, and I had forced a smile onto my face that felt like it was held in place by staples. Caleb walked in, whistling. He looked relaxed, the tension of the morning completely gone. He saw me at the stove and grinned, dropping his briefcase on the counter. "Smells amazing, babe," he said, walking over and wrapping his arms around my waist from behind. He kissed the side of my neck. I wanted to drive my elbow into his ribs. I wanted to scream that I knew about the platinum, I knew about the emeralds, I knew about Birdie. His lips felt wet and cold against my skin. I forced myself to lean back into him, fighting every instinct to recoil. "I'm glad you're home," I said, my voice sounding disturbingly normal. "I wanted to make it up to you." He squeezed me tight. "You didn't have to do all this, but I appreciate it. I really do." He let go and went to the fridge to grab a beer. I exhaled, my breath trembling. I dished the stroganoff onto the plates, making sure his portion was the largest, making sure the parsley garnish was perfectly centered. We sat down. Diane was already there, napkin tucked into her collar, eyeing the wine bottle I had opened. "This looks delicious, Maya," she said, taking a sip of wine. "See? When you put your mind to it, you can be quite domestic." I smiled at her. "Thank you, Diane." We ate in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the clinking of silverware. I watched Caleb eat. He took large bites, chewing with a rhythmic jaw movement that mesmerized me. How could he eat so calmly? How could he sit there knowing he had a second fiancé, a second life, and just eat noodles? "So," Caleb said, wiping his mouth, "I was thinking, since you're making such an effort to be more grounded, maybe we should look at your car situation." I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. My car was a 10-year-old sedan that rattled when it went over 40. What about it? "Well," he said, gesturing with his fork, "it's getting expensive to maintain, and with gas prices, I was thinking maybe we trade it in, get you something smaller, more efficient, maybe a used hatchback?" My heart hammered. He wanted to downgrade my car. He was buying platinum jewelry for Birdie, and he wanted to put me in a used hatchback. "But my car is paid off," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "I know, but the insurance, the repairs, it adds up. I'm just trying to look out for our future, Maya. We need to be lean. Lean." He wanted me lean. He wanted me cheap. Diane nodded in agreement. "He's right, dear. A smaller car is much easier to park anyway. You always struggle with the parallel parking." I looked from Caleb to Diane. They were a team, a two-headed monster designed to consume me. I gripped my fork so hard my knuckles turned white. A laugh bubbled up in my throat, a hysterical, jagged thing. I swallowed it down with a gulp of wine. "You're so thoughtful," I said. The words tasted like bile. Caleb beamed. "I try. Anyway, let's not talk business. This sauce is incredible. Did you use the heavy cream?" I nodded. "Yes." "Good. You shouldn't skimp on the good stuff." I stared at him. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. Don't skimp on the cream. Skimp on the wife. Suddenly, the room felt too small. The walls were closing in. The sound of Diane chewing was like a jackhammer. I forgot the bread, I blurted out, standing up abruptly. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. I rushed to the kitchen, gripping the counter. I stared at the sink, breathing hard. I couldn't do this. I was going to crack. I was going to grab the frying pan and swing it. "Maya?" Caleb called out. "You okay?" I squeezed my eyes shut. I counted to 3. 1, 2, 3. I grabbed the basket of bread rolls. I put the smile back on. "Coming," I called back, just warming them up. The next morning, I called in sick to the law firm. I couldn't focus on contracts and filings. I felt like I was vibrating, my skin too tight for my body. I needed to get out of the house before Diane came knocking for her morning tea and sympathy. I drove to a coffee shop 3 towns over. I needed to be somewhere where no one knew me, where I wasn't Caleb's wife or Diane's project. I ordered a black coffee, the cheapest thing on the menu, and sat in a corner booth with my back to the wall. I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app. I had done this 1,000 times, but today I looked with different eyes. I wasn't looking for the balance. I was looking for the holes. I scrolled through the last month, grocery store, gas station, utilities, mortgage. It all looked normal. That was the terrifying part. On paper, we were a boring, middle-class couple living paycheck to paycheck. But where did the money for the bracelet come from? $350 for the fake glass one he claimed to buy? Or thousands for the real one? It wasn't on our joint account. It wasn't on his personal credit card that I had access to. He had a secret account. He had to. I took a sip of the bitter coffee, my mind racing. How did he fund it? He was a logistics manager. He made a decent salary, but not secret platinum jewelry money, unless he was skimming or gambling or... My thoughts were interrupted by a loud voice from the table behind me. "I'm telling you, the guy is a slippery snake." I froze. The voice was gravelly, agitated. I tried to ignore it, but the man continued, his volume rising. "He cooked the books, Jerry. I saw the manifest. He's moving inventory that doesn't exist. He's leveraging the company credit for personal assets. It's a classic shell game." I sat very still. Shell game, inventory. And the worst part? The man said, slamming something onto the table. "He's got everyone fooled. The board loves him. His wife probably thinks he's a saint. Caleb is a master at this." My blood turned to ice. Caleb? It was a common name. There were thousands of Calebs. But logistics? Inventory? Wife thinks he's a saint? I slowly turned my head. The man was sitting alone, talking into a headset. He looked like a wreck. He was wearing a wrinkled button-down shirt with coffee stains on the cuff. His hair was a mess of gray and brown curls, and he had a laptop open in front of him, surrounded by stacks of paper. I listened closer. "Yeah, Caleb Vance thinks he's untouchable," the man growled. "But I kept the copies, Jerry. I kept everything from the warehouse days." Vance. My Caleb's last name was Vance. The world stopped spinning. The noise of the espresso machine faded into a dull roar. This wasn't a coincidence. This was fate grabbing me by the throat. I stood up. My legs felt like jelly. I walked over to the man's table. He didn't notice me at first. He was furiously typing on his laptop, muttering into his headset. "No, I'm not going to the police yet. I need more than just the old manifests. I need to link it to the new..." "Excuse me," I said. The man jumped, his hand flying to cover the microphone. He looked up at me with bloodshot eyes. He looked tired, deeply, soul-crushingly tired. "I'm on a call, lady," he snapped, waving me away. "You said Caleb Vance," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise of the shop. The man went still. He stared at me, his eyes narrowing. He looked me up and down, taking in my sensible shoes, my nervous posture, my pale face. Slowly he took the headset off and placed it on the table. "Who's asking?" he rumbled. I took a breath. I'm Maya, his wife. The man's eyes widened. He let out a short, sharp breath that might have been a laugh. Maya, he repeated. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. Well, well. The invisible woman. I bristled. What do you mean? He smirked, but it wasn't unkind. It was pitying. Caleb talks about you. Or rather, he doesn't. When we started the firm, he used to say, my wife handles the home, I handle the world. He made you sound like a piece of furniture. I felt the sting of tears, but I blinked them away. Who are you? I'm Elias, he said. I'm the guy your husband stepped on to get to the middle. I was his partner until 6 months ago, before he decided my cut of the profits was better suited for his expansion. Expansion? I asked. Elias gestured to the chair opposite him. Sit down, Maya. You look like you're about to faint. I sat. I shouldn't be talking to him. Caleb said his old partner was a drug addict, a thief, someone who tried to ruin the company. Caleb told me you were fired for embezzlement, I said, testing the waters. Elias laughed, a dry barking sound. Of course he did. Did he also tell you that the embezzlement was me trying to pay our vendors when he had drained the operating account? Drained it? For what? Elias leaned forward. His eyes were intense. That's the million-dollar question. Literally. He's moving money, Maya. Big money. He creates fake invoices for shipping containers that don't exist. The company pays the invoice to a shell corporation. The shell corporation pays... Well, I don't know where it goes. That's the missing piece. I thought of the emeralds. I thought of the platinum. I might know where some of it goes, I whispered. I drove home in a daze. Elias had given me his number on a torn piece of napkin. He told me to call him if I found anything. He told me Caleb was dangerous. Not physically, maybe, but financially. He called him a financial sociopath. But as I pulled into my driveway, looking at the manicured lawn and the blooming hydrangeas, doubt started to creep in. Elias looked crazy. He was disheveled. He was angry. Caleb was polished. Caleb was successful. Caleb paid the mortgage on time. Was I really going to trust a stranger in a coffee shop over my husband of 5 years? Maybe Elias was lying. Maybe he was the embezzler, just like Caleb said. Maybe he was trying to manipulate me to get back at Caleb. I walked into the house. It smelled like lemon pledge and stability. Diane was in the living room folding laundry. "Hello, dear," she called out. "You're home early. Feeling better?" I stood there looking at the normalcy of it all. It felt safe. It felt known. The idea that this was all a house of cards built on fraud was too big, too terrifying to accept. Yes, I said. I just needed some fresh air. I went to the bedroom and took the napkin with Elias's number out of my pocket. I stared at the scrawled digits. I crumpled it up. I threw it in the trash can by the vanity. I couldn't do this. I couldn't be a spy. I couldn't be a traitor. I would just try harder. I would make the budget work. I would be the wife Caleb wanted. Maybe the bracelet was a mistake. Maybe I misunderstood the phone call. Maybe the woman at the jewelry store was looking at the wrong order. I built a wall of denial, brick by brick. It was flimsy, but it was all I had. 3 days later, the wall collapsed. It was Saturday morning. We were in the kitchen. I was unpacking groceries. I had been careful. I had used coupons. I had bought the generic brands. I felt proud of myself. Caleb picked up the receipt from the counter. He scanned it, his eyes darting down the list of items. I held my breath, waiting for approval, waiting for him to say, "Good job, Maya." "Why did you buy raspberries?" he asked, his voice low. I turned around. "They were on sale," I said quickly. And I know you like them in your yogurt." "They were $4, Maya," he said, looking at me like I had burned money in the sink. $4 for a box of fruit that will go bad in 2 days. "But they're antioxidants," I stammered. I thought. "You didn't think," he snapped. He threw the receipt onto the counter. We are trying to save for a vacation. We are trying to build wealth. And you're pissing it away on berries and… What is this? $7 for artisanal bread? It's whole grain, I whispered. It's better for your heart. My heart is fine, he yelled. My wallet is what's hurting. God, Maya, do you have any concept of value? Do you think money just grows on trees? Diane walked in from the garden, wiping her hands on a towel. What's all the shouting? She bought raspberries and fancy bread, Caleb said, pointing at the offending items like they were contraband drugs. After we explicitly talked about tightening the belt, Diane tisked, shaking her head at me. Oh, Maya, we talked about this. Self-control. It's a virtue. I looked at the raspberries. $4. I looked at Caleb. He was wearing a watch that cost $500. I looked at his wrist. The phantom weight of the platinum bracelet hung in the air between us. He spent thousands on a woman named Birdie. He had a secret life. He was committing fraud. And he was screaming at me over $4. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet sound of a tether breaking. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I picked up the raspberries. You're right, I said calmly. I'll take them back. Caleb looked surprised by my sudden submission. Good. And the bread. I nodded. And the bread. I walked out of the house with the bag of groceries. I got into my car. I didn't go to the store. I drove to the trash can where I had thrown the napkin. Wait, I was in the car. I had to go back inside to get the number. No, I remembered the number. I have a mind for numbers. That was the one thing Caleb couldn't take from me. I drove to the coffee shop. I sat in the same booth. I didn't know if Elias would be there. I prayed he was. I waited for an hour. I watched the door. Every time it opened, my heart jumped. Finally, he walked in. Same wrinkled shirt. Same heavy laptop bag. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He saw me immediately. He didn't smile. He just walked over and sat down. You look like hell, he said. I feel like hell, I replied. He opened his laptop. Did he hit you? No, I said. He yelled at me for buying raspberries. Elias snorted. Sounds like him. Penny pincher at home, high roller everywhere else. I leaned forward. I placed my hands flat on the table to stop them from shaking. You said you have copies of the manifests, I said. I do, and you said you need to link them to the new shell company. I do. I took a deep breath. I know where he keeps his personal files, not the ones in the office, the ones he keeps in the storage unit. Elias froze. Storage unit? I didn't know he had one. He does, I lied. I didn't know for sure, but I had seen a key on his key ring that didn't fit the house or the car. It was a small brass key with a number stamped on it. And last month, I found a flyer for Secure Keep Storage in the trash. It was a guess, a desperate, wild guess. He goes there on Tuesday nights, I continued, weaving the lie with the threads of truth I had observed. He says he's at the gym, but his gym bag never smells like sweat. Elias looked at me with new respect. Smart girl. I'm not smart, I said bitterly. I'm just tired of being the fool. I can help you get in, Elias said, but we need a plan. If he catches us… He won't, I said, because next Tuesday I'm going to make sure he's distracted. How? I'm going to tell him I'm pregnant. Elias's eyebrows shot up. Are you? No. But nothing makes Caleb more distracted than the thought of spending money on a child he doesn't want. Elias let out a low whistle. You're playing a dangerous game, Maya. I looked at him, my eyes hard and dry. I know, but I'm done playing by his rules. Tell me what I need to do. Elias leaned across the sticky table, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper. He told me exactly what I was looking for. He said Caleb didn't trust the cloud. He said Caleb was old school when it came to his crimes. He kept a physical ledger, a black notebook with a red spine, where he tracked the real money versus the fake money. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. a black notebook. I had seen a notebook like that. It was years ago, tucked into his briefcase. I had asked about it, and he had snapped it shut, telling me it was confidential client data. "If you find that book," Elias said, staring right into my soul, "you don't just read it. You photograph every single page, and then you put it back exactly where you found it. If he knows you've seen it, Maya, he won't just divorce you. He will ruin you. He will make sure you walk away with nothing but the debt he's racked up in your name." My stomach twisted. The debt in my name. I hadn't even checked my credit report yet. I was too afraid. I asked him how he knew about the debt. Elias laughed, a sound like dry leaves crunched underfoot. Because that's what he did to me. He took out lines of credit in the company name, forged my signature, and left me holding the bag. "I'm still paying off lawyers. Don't let him do it to you." I nodded, feeling the weight of the task settling on my shoulders. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage anymore. I was fighting for my survival. I left the coffee shop with a plan, but my body was rebelling. My jaw ached with a dull, throbbing pressure that was slowly spreading to my temple. I had been grinding my teeth in my sleep for weeks, the stress of the secrets turning my mouth into a vice. That night, the pain woke me up. It wasn't a dull ache anymore. It was a sharp, blinding spike of agony that shot through my molar and exploded behind my eye. I sat up in bed, gasping. The room was dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside filtering through the blinds. Caleb was asleep beside me, his breathing deep and even. He looked so peaceful, so innocent. It made me want to shake him until his teeth rattled too. I stumbled to the bathroom and flipped on the light. I opened my mouth and peered into the mirror. The molar on the bottom left looked wrong. It was jagged. I touched it with my tongue and tasted copper. I had cracked it. I had literally cracked my tooth from clenching my jaw so hard. Tears welled up in my eyes, not just from the pain, but from the pathetic reality of it. I was falling apart. My body was breaking under the weight of his lies. I needed a dentist, but a dentist cost money. Emergency dental work cost a lot of money. I looked at my reflection. Pale skin, dark circles, a broken tooth. I looked like a victim. No. I straightened my spine. I wasn't a victim. I was a spy, and this broken tooth was my ticket. I went back into the bedroom. I didn't wake him gently. I shook his shoulder hard. "Caleb," I said, letting the pain infuse my voice. "Caleb, wake up." He groaned, rolling over. "What? What is it?" "My tooth," I whimpered. "I think it broke. It hurts. God, it hurts." He sat up, rubbing his eyes. He checked the clock. "It's 3 a.m, Maya. Take an aspirin." "I can't," I sobbed. "It's bad. I need to go to the emergency dentist as soon as they open." He sighed, the sound of a man inconvenienced by his wife's existence. "Fine. We'll go in the morning. Go back to sleep." He rolled over. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't offer to get me ice. He just went back to sleep. I lay there in the dark, the pain pulsing in time with my heartbeat. Every throb was a reminder. Get the key. Find the book. Burn it all down. The drive to the dentist was tense. Caleb drove his sedan because he didn't trust my rattling car on the highway. I sat in the passenger seat holding a bag of frozen peas to my jaw. The cold numbed the pain slightly, but the silence in the car was deafening. He was on a call with his office, using the hands-free system. He was explaining that he would be late because of a family medical issue. He sounded like a saint. He sounded like the devoted husband sacrificing his valuable time. I stared at the dashboard. I needed to know where the storage unit was. I had told Elias I knew, but that was a bluff. I knew he had a key. I knew he had a flyer, but I didn't know the unit number or the location code. Caleb hung up the phone. "This is going to cost a fortune, you know," he said, glancing at me. "Crowns aren't cheap." "I know," I mumbled through the frozen peas. "I'm sorry." He pulled into the parking lot of the dental clinic. "I'll wait in the car," he said. "I have emails to answer." I reached for the door handle, but then I stopped. I saw it. Tucked into the sun visor on the driver's side, partially obscured by a pair of sunglasses, was a white card. It wasn't a business card, it was a swipe card, the kind used for gated entry. I needed to see it. I think I left my insurance card in your glove box," I lied. "Last time we went to the pharmacy?" He sighed, annoyed. "Check. Quickly." I opened the glove box and pretended to rummage. While he was looking at his phone, I let my left hand drift up. I adjusted the visor, pretending to block the sun. My eyes scanned the card. It was white with a blue logo, Secure Keep Storage. And written on the corner in black permanent marker was a sequence, B42, code 7790. I memorized it instantly. B42, 7790. "I can't find it," I said, closing the glove box. "I must have it in my purse." "Just go," Caleb said, waving me away. "You're wasting time." I got out of the car. The pain in my tooth was screaming, but the triumph in my chest was louder. I had the location. I had the unit number. I had the code. Now I just needed the key. The dentist confirmed I needed a crown. He numbed me up, drilled, and sent me home with a temporary cap and a prescription for strong painkillers. By the time we got home, my face was numb and drooping, and I felt floaty from the medication. Diane was waiting at the door, wringing her hands. "Oh, poor thing," she cried, ushering me inside. "You look dreadful." Caleb walked past us. "I'm going to the home office. I lost half the day. Don't disturb me." I went upstairs to the bedroom. I needed to sleep, but I also needed that key. I knew where he kept his keys when he was home. He had a small leather valet tray on his dresser. He always dumped his pockets there the moment he walked in. I lay on the bed, feigning exhaustion. I heard him come into the room to change out of his suit. I kept my eyes closed, breathing evenly. I heard the jingle of keys hitting the leather tray. I heard the rustle of fabric. I heard his footsteps leave the room. I waited 10 seconds, then 20. I sat up. The room spun slightly. I gripped the nightstand to steady myself. I walked to the dresser. There it was, the key ring, and on it the small brass key that didn't fit the house. I had prepared for this. I had gone to the junk drawer in the kitchen earlier that week and found an old key from a padlock we lost years ago. It was brass. It was roughly the same size. My hands shook as I worked the key off the ring. My fingernails chipped against the metal. "Come on," I whispered. The brass key slid off. I shoved it into my bra. I took the dummy key and threaded it onto the ring. It was a tight fit. It took too long. I heard footsteps in the hall. My heart slammed against my ribs. I twisted the key. It clicked into place just as the doorknob turned. I threw myself back onto the bed, pulling the duvet up to my chin. Caleb walked in. He looked at me. He looked at the dresser. "Did you take your pill?" he asked. I nodded, keeping my eyes half closed. "Yes, I'm sleepy." He stared at me for a moment longer. There was suspicion in his eyes, or maybe just contempt. I couldn't tell. "Sleep then," he said. "Mom made soup. I'll bring some up later." He turned and left. I let out a breath that shuddered through my entire body. I felt the cold metal of the real key pressing against my skin. I had it. I waited until midnight. The house was silent. I could hear Caleb snoring lightly beside me. The painkillers had worn off enough that I felt alert, though my jaw was throbbing with a dull, persistent rhythm. I slipped out of bed. I didn't change out of my pajamas. I just pulled a hoodie over them and put on my sneakers. I felt like a teenager sneaking out to a party, except I was a 30-year-old woman sneaking out to dismantle her life. I grabbed my car keys. I grabbed the brass key from where I had hidden it inside a hollowed-out deodorant stick. I crept downstairs. The third step squeaked. I froze. Silence. I made it to the kitchen. I grabbed a flashlight. I hesitated, then grabbed a tire iron from the emergency kit in the utility closet. I didn't know what I would find. I didn't know if I would need protection. I went out the back door to avoid the noise of the garage opener. My car was parked in the driveway. I got in and started the engine. It roared to life, sounding like a cannon blast in the quiet neighborhood. I threw it into reverse and backed out, praying Diane wasn't looking out her window. The drive to Secure Keep storage took 20 minutes. The streets were empty. The rain had started to fall, a light drizzle that smeared the streetlights across my windshield. I pulled up to the gate. It was a fortress of chain-link fences and barbed wire. A keypad glowed ominously on a metal post. I rolled down the window. The rain hit my face, cold and sharp. I punched in the code I had memorized, 779 0. "Please," I whispered. The keypad beeped. A green light flashed. The gate groaned and began to slide open. I drove through. The facility was a maze of corrugated metal doors painted a depressing shade of orange. I drove slowly, checking the numbers. A100, B200. I found row B. I crawled along until I saw it. Unit B42. I parked the car and killed the engine. The silence rushed back in, heavy and suffocating. I got out. I walked to the door. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the flashlight. It clattered on the asphalt, the beam spinning wildly. I picked it up. I took the brass key. I slid it into the padlock. It fit. I turned it. The mechanism gave a satisfying click. I pulled the lock off and lifted the latch. The door rolled up with a screech of metal on metal that sounded like a scream. I shone the flashlight into the darkness. I expected boxes of files. I expected stacks of cash. I expected the black notebook. I didn't expect furniture. The unit was full. But it wasn't a warehouse. It was a showroom. There was a crib. A white hand-carved crib with a mobile of soft felt birds hanging over it. There was a changing table, a rocking chair, boxes of diapers stacked to the ceiling, and in the corner a vanity table. On it sat a jewelry box. I walked in, my legs numb. I felt like I was walking into someone else's dream. I opened the jewelry box. Inside were earrings, necklaces, and a photo strip. It was Caleb. He was smiling, a real, genuine smile I hadn't seen in years. He was hugging a woman. She was petite, blonde, beautiful, and she was heavily pregnant. I turned the photo over. On the back, in Caleb's handwriting, "Birdie and the baby, my new beginning." I dropped the photo. It fluttered to the concrete floor. This wasn't just fraud. This wasn't just an affair. He wasn't stealing money to hoard it. He was stealing money to build a completely new family. He was funding his escape. And he was using my credit, my life, my future to pay for it. I looked at the crib again. The mobile spun slowly in the draft from the open door. The felt birds danced, hummingbirds. I fell to my knees. The tire iron clattered to the ground next to me. A sound tore out of my throat, a raw animal sound of grief and rage. He was going to leave me. He was going to leave me bankrupt and broken while he played house with Birdie and their baby in a nursery paid for by my financial ruin. I looked at the boxes of diapers. I looked at the brand. It was the expensive kind, the organic kind. I stood up. The grief evaporated. The rage remained. It hardened into something cold and sharp, like the cracked tooth in my mouth. I wasn't going to let him leave. Not like this. I began to search. I tore through the boxes of baby clothes. I ripped open the bags of toys. I needed the ledger. Elias said there was a ledger. If he was keeping all this here, the book had to be here too. I found it in the bottom drawer of the changing table, buried under a stack of bibs, a black notebook with a red spine. I opened it, columns of numbers, dates, amounts, and notes. Transfer to Shell Corp Alpha, $10,000. Birdie medical bills, $5,000. Maya emergency card payoff, min payment, $150. He was paying the minimum on my debt while funneling thousands to her. I pulled out my phone. My hands were steady now. I started taking pictures. I took the last picture. My hand was shaking so hard the image on the screen blurred, a wash of white paper and black ink. I forced myself to breathe. In, out. I steadied my grip and took it again. The numbers were clear. The betrayal was captured. I closed the black notebook. The cover felt cool and slick under my sweaty palms. I placed it back in the drawer, sliding it under the stack of bibs exactly where I had found it. I adjusted the fabric, making sure the corner of the notebook wasn't peeking out. It had to look untouched. It had to look like a secret that was still safe. I stood up and scanned the room, the crib, the diapers, the jewelry box. I wanted to burn it all. I wanted to take the tire iron and smash the crib into splinters. I wanted to shred the organic diapers and scatter them like snow. But I couldn't. Not yet. I backed out of the unit, sweeping the beam of my flashlight over the floor to make sure I hadn't dropped anything. No hair, no buttons, no trace of Maya. I pulled the metal door down. It rumbled in the track, a sound like thunder in the quiet night. I froze, waiting for a security guard, a dog, a siren. Silence. Just the steady rhythm of the rain hitting the asphalt. I snapped the padlock back onto the latch and squeezed it shut. The click echoed in the emptiness. I ran to my car. I didn't look back. I drove out of the gate, my heart hammering a frantic beat against my ribs. I had the evidence. I had the weapon. But as I merged onto the highway, the triumph faded, replaced by a cold, creeping terror. I had the proof, but I was still going home to sleep in the bed of the man who was building a life without me. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. The digital clock on the dashboard read 3 a.m. I killed the engine and coasted into the garage, praying the door mechanism wouldn't whine. I crept inside. My socks slid on the hardwood floors. I made it to the bedroom door and pushed it open inch by inch. Caleb was still asleep. He was on his back, mouth slightly open, one arm thrown over his eyes. He looked vulnerable. He looked like the man I married. It was a terrifying disguise. I moved to the dresser. The leather valet tray sat there, holding the keys. I held my breath. This was the hardest part. I reached into my bra and pulled out the brass key. It was warm from my skin. I picked up his key ring with my other hand. The metal jingled softly. Caleb shifted in the bed. He let out a low groan and rolled over. I froze. I stood there in the dark, my heart slamming against my chest so hard I thought he would hear it. If he woke up now, if he saw me swapping keys at 3 a.m, the game was over. He would know. He settled back into the pillow. His breathing deepened again. I exhaled, a silent shudder. I worked the dummy key off the ring. My fingers were slippery with sweat. It wouldn't budge. I used my nail to pry the split ring open. It snapped back, pinching my skin. I bit my lip to keep from crying out. Finally, the dummy key slid free. I threaded the real key back on. I dropped the key ring back into the tray. It landed with a soft thud. I crept into bed, still wearing my clothes under the covers. I didn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the man beside me breathe, waiting for the sun to rise and burn us both to the ground. The next morning, I was a zombie. I sat at the kitchen table staring at my coffee. Diane walked in, fresh and vibrant in a floral housecoat. She took one look at me and gasped, bringing a hand to her chest. "Oh, Maya," she cooed, tilting her head. "You look absolutely dreadful." I took a sip of coffee. "Thank you, Diane." "I mean it, dear. The bags under your eyes, they're practically purple. And your skin is so gray. Are you sure this job of yours isn't too much for you?" She walked over and smoothed my hair, a gesture that felt more like petting a stray dog than affection. "Maybe you should consider quitting," she continued, her voice dripping with poisonous concern. "Caleb makes enough for both of you. If you stayed home, you could focus on your health, you could get some rest, you wouldn't look so worn out." I looked up at her. She wasn't worried about me. She was disgusted by me. She wanted me hidden away, a silent ghost in her son's house until he was ready to discard me. "I'm fine," I said, my voice flat. "Just the tooth pain." She sighed. "Well, try to put on some concealer before you go out. You don't want people thinking Caleb isn't taking care of you." I met Elias in the parking lot of a derelict shopping mall. It was raining again, a gray, miserable drizzle that matched my mood. I climbed into his truck. It smelled of stale cigarettes and old coffee. I handed him my phone. He scrolled through the photos in silence. His face was grim, illuminated by the harsh blue light of the screen. He paused on the page with the shell company transfers. He paused on the page with the Birdie expenses. "Jesus," he whispered. He looked at me. "Maya, this isn't just embezzlement. This is grand larceny. He's moving assets out of the country." I pointed to the last photo, the one of the credit card statements I found in the back of the notebook. "Look at the names on the cards," I said. Elias squinted. "Maya Vance. Maya Vance. Maya Vance." "He's opened 3 credit lines in your name," Elias said, his voice low, "and he's maxed them out. He's using your credit to build his nest egg. When he leaves, he's going to leave you with the debt and take the cash." I felt the panic rising again, a cold tide in my chest. "How much?" I asked. Elias did some mental math, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel. "Based on these monthly payments, maybe 50,000, maybe more, plus the mortgage fraud. Maya, if the bank finds out, they won't just foreclose. They might look at you as an accomplice." I gripped the door handle. "I didn't sign anything." "It doesn't matter," Elias said. "Your name is on the paper. Proving you didn't know is hard when you've been living in the house and eating the food bought with that money." He handed the phone back to me. "We have enough to bury him, but we have to be careful. If we trigger an investigation now, the accounts freeze. You need to secure your own survival fund before we blow the whistle." "How?" "I have $40 in my checking account." Elias reached into his back seat and pulled out a file folder. "Then you need to get creative. You need to get his liquid assets, the ones he thinks are safe." I drove home, my mind racing with Elias's instructions. Liquid assets, cash, jewelry, anything I could sell. When I walked into the house, the atmosphere had changed. The heavy, suffocating silence was gone, replaced by a frantic energy. Suitcases were open on the living room floor. Caleb was packing. My heart stopped. Was he leaving? Did he know? "Hey!" he called out from the bedroom, sounding cheerful. "Great news. The conference in Tokyo got moved up. I have to fly out tomorrow morning." Tokyo. He didn't have clients in Tokyo. I walked to the bedroom doorway. "Tokyo?" I asked. "That's sudden." He folded a crisp white shirt and placed it in the bag. "I know, but it's a huge opportunity. I'll be gone for 2 weeks, maybe 3. 3 weeks. I looked at the suitcase. It wasn't just suits. He was packing casual clothes, his favorite watch, his expensive cologne. He wasn't going to a conference. He was going to Birdie. The baby was probably coming. He was going to be there for the birth. And he wasn't coming back. "Oh," he said, pausing. "And don't worry about the bills while I'm gone. I set everything to auto-pay. Just keep spending to a minimum, okay? We're really stretching for this trip." He smiled at me. It was a dazzling, perfect smile. The smile of a man who had successfully pulled off the heist of a lifetime. "I'm really proud of you, Caleb," I said. The lie tasted like blood in my mouth. "Thanks, babe." He zipped up the suitcase. The sound was like a body bag closing. I realized then that I didn't have weeks. I had hours. Once he got on that plane, he would drain the accounts remotely. He would disappear, and I would be left with the debt, the house, and his mother. I needed to act. Now. I couldn't go to a normal lawyer. I didn't have the money for a retainer, and I didn't have the time for an appointment. I went to the legal clinic at the community center 3 towns over. It was a walk-in service. I sat on a hard plastic chair for 2 hours, sandwiched between a woman crying about an eviction and a man muttering about government conspiracies. Finally, a young lawyer called my name. She looked tired, her blouse wrinkled, but her eyes were sharp. I laid it out for her. Not the emotional story, the numbers, the fraud, the identity theft. She listened, taking notes on a yellow pad. When I finished, she put the pen down. "You are in a very dangerous position," she said. Her voice was clipped, professional. If he leaves the country, serving him divorce papers becomes a nightmare. Recovering assets becomes impossible. "What do I do?" I asked. "You need to file for an emergency freeze on the assets," she said. "But that takes a judge. That takes time." "You don't have time." She leaned forward. "You said you have access to his home office?" "Yes." "And you said he keeps physical banking tokens? The little devices that generate codes?" "Yes, in the safe." "If you can access the accounts," she said carefully, choosing her words to avoid counseling a crime, "and if you were to move joint funds into a sole account to protect them from theft, that would be a civil matter to be sorted out in divorce court, not a crime." She looked at me. "Do you understand the distinction?" I nodded. I understood. If I took the money, I was protecting marital assets. If I let him take it, it was gone. "But he has the code to the safe," I said. She shrugged. "Then you better hope he wrote it down somewhere. Men like that usually do. They're arrogant. They think no one is smart enough to look." I went home. It was 6 p.m. Caleb was in the shower getting ready for his last dinner before the trip. Diane was in the kitchen, humming. "We're ordering pizza," she announced. A little treat for Caleb's big trip. Pizza, the food of celebration. I went to the home office. I closed the door. The safe was in the closet, bolted to the floor. It was a digital keypad, 4 digits. I stared at it. I tried his birthday. Error. I tried our anniversary. Error. I tried the last 4 digits of his social. Error. The keypad flashed red. 1 attempt remaining. Panic clawed at my throat. If I locked it out, he would know. I closed my eyes. Think. What matters to him? Not me, not his mom. Birdie. I thought about the receipt. The date on the receipt for the bracelet. May 12th. Or was it the 12th of May? No. The storage unit code. 7790. I had memorized it, but I hadn't analyzed it. 7790. Wait. B4, 2, Birdie. B. What if the numbers spelled something? No, that was too complex. I thought about the photo in the storage unit. The ultrasound photo I had glimpsed in the box. It had a date on it. The due date. July 4th, 704. I looked at the keypad. I thought about the storage unit code again. 7790. It wasn't a date. It was the price of the first car he ever bought. A vintage Mustang he wouldn't shut up about. He sold it to start the business. He always said it was the only thing he regretted losing. But that was a long shot. I looked at the desk. There was a calendar on the wall. It was open to July. A date was circled in red. Not the 4th, the 21st, 721. I stared at it. Why 21? Then it hit me. Birdie. B is the second letter. I is the 9th. R is the 18th. No, simpler. I looked at the notepad on his desk. He had been doodling. He had written Project Phoenix over and over again. Phoenix. Rebirth. I looked at the keypad. I typed in the year he started the company. The year he became who he is. 2018. Error. System locked. A loud beep echoed through the room. My heart stopped. From the hallway, I heard Caleb's voice. "Maya, what are you doing in there?" The doorknob turned. I spun around, putting my back to the safe, trying to hide the flashing red light. Caleb walked in, a towel around his waist. He looked at me. He looked at the safe behind me. His eyes narrowed. I was looking for stamps," I stammered. "For the bills. You said to pay the bills." He walked toward me. He didn't look like my husband anymore. He looked like a predator who had just found a rat in his pantry. "The safe is beeping, Maya," he said softly. "Why is the safe beeping?" I slipped. The words tumbled out of my mouth before my brain could vet them. I pointed a shaking finger at the shelf above the safe where a dusty stack of old tax files sat. I was trying to reach the tax file, I lied, my voice trembling with a mix of genuine terror and calculated frailty. Diane asked about the property tax receipt for the garden shed. I climbed on the chair, lost my balance, and grabbed the safe handle to stop from falling. I must have mashed the keypad. Caleb stared at me. The water from his hair dripped onto the carpet. He looked at the chair, which was indeed pushed slightly out of place. He looked at my pale, sweaty face. "You are so clumsy," he muttered, the suspicion in his eyes dialing down to simple annoyance. "You could have broken it. Do you know how much a locksmith costs on a Sunday night?" "I'm sorry," I whispered, looking at my feet. "I just wanted to help Diane." He scoffed and turned away, walking back to the bedroom. "Just stay away from it, and tell Mom the tax files are in the attic, not the office. You're looking in the wrong place, as usual." I exhaled, a sound that felt like a balloon deflating in my chest. He bought it. His arrogance was his blind spot. He couldn't imagine a world where I was capable of espionage, only a world where I was capable of failure. I followed him out. The safe was locked out for 15 minutes. I checked the clock on the wall. It was 6:30. The pizza would be here any minute. I had 15 minutes to figure out how to knock him out. The pizza arrived in a cardboard box, grease-stained at the corners. Diane set the table with the good china, humming a tune that sounded like a funeral dirge. Caleb sat at the head of the table, pouring himself a beer. I watched the golden liquid fill the glass. I felt the bottle of painkillers in my pocket. They were strong. The dentist had warned me not to drive or operate heavy machinery. "I need a napkin," I announced, standing up. I went to the kitchen. Caleb's second beer was sitting on the counter, unopened. I grabbed a mortar and pestle from the spice rack, a wedding gift we never used. I took 2 white pills from the bottle. I crushed them. The sound was a soft crunch that seemed deafening in the quiet kitchen. I dusted the fine white powder into the bottom of a fresh glass. I poured the beer over it. The foam rose, hiding the sediment. I walked back to the dining room. Caleb had finished his first glass. "Here," I said, placing the fresh one in front of him. "You deserve to relax before your flight." He looked at me, surprised by the gesture. "Thanks, babe." He took a long sip. I sat down and picked at a slice of pepperoni pizza. My heart was thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Every time he lifted the glass, I held my breath. Drink it, I thought. Drink it all. By the time the pizza was gone, Caleb's eyelids were drooping. He slurred a joke about the Tokyo office. He rubbed his face. "Man," he mumbled, "I'm beat. Must be the stress." He stood up, swaying slightly. "I'm gonna crash. Wake me up at 5 for the taxi." He stumbled toward the bedroom. Diane watched him go, a fond smile on her face. "He works so hard," she sighed. I looked at her. I looked at the empty glass. "Yes," I said. "He's going to sleep very soundly tonight." I waited an hour. I sat in the living room pretending to read a magazine while Diane cleaned the kitchen. Finally, she went to her suite. The house was silent. I walked into the bedroom. Caleb was sprawled on his stomach, snoring heavily. I shook his shoulder. He didn't stir. I pinched his arm. Hard. Nothing. The drugs worked. I grabbed his phone from the nightstand. It was locked. Face ID required. I needed his face. I gently rolled him over. He was dead weight. His head lolled back onto the pillow. I held the phone up to his face. The screen stayed black. His eyes were closed. It wouldn't unlock if his eyes were closed. It was a security feature. Panic flared. I used my thumb and forefinger to pry his right eyelid open. He looked like a corpse. It was grotesque. I held the phone up again. The padlock icon at the top of the screen snapped open. I let his eyelid drop and exhaled. I was in. I went straight to his secure folder. Password required. I tried the code from the storage unit. 7790. Incorrect. I tried the price of the raspberries. 4,000. Incorrect. Think. What does he love? Himself. I typed in his birthday. Incorrect. I typed in the word Caleb converted to numbers on a keypad. 22532. Access granted. I almost laughed. Of course. I opened the Notes app inside the secure folder. There was a single note titled Keys. It contained a list of passwords, bank logins, crypto wallets, and at the bottom, safe 4481. I stared at the number, 4481. It didn't mean anything to me, and then I realized it was the last 4 digits of his mother's phone number, the only 2 women he loved, Birdie and Diane. I pocketed his phone and ran to the office. I knelt before the safe. I typed in the code, 4481. The mechanism whirred. The heavy door clicked open. I pulled it open. Inside, there were stacks of cash, passports, and the small plastic banking tokens. I grabbed the laptop from his desk. I opened it. I logged into the offshore shell company account using the credentials from his phone. The screen loaded. The balance flashed in green, $240,000. That was it. That was the nest egg. That was the money he stole from our future. I opened a second tab. I logged into the new account I had created 2 days ago using my maiden name. I set up a transfer. Full balance. A prompt appeared. Enter token code. I grabbed the token from the safe. I pressed the button. A 6-digit number appeared on the tiny LCD screen. I typed it in. Another prompt, 2-factor authentication sent to registered mobile. I looked at his phone. A text message popped up. I typed the code from the text into the laptop. I hit confirm. The screen buffered. The little circle spun. Transaction approved. The balance in his account dropped to 0. I sat back on my heels. I felt lightheaded. I had done it. I had stolen it back. But I wasn't done. I went to the settings tab on his account. I changed the password. I changed the recovery email to mine. I locked him out. I put the token back in the safe. I put the cash in my pocket, $3,000 in loose bills. I closed the safe. I stood up. I needed to leave. Now. But as I turned to go, the front door chime echoed through the house. Someone was here. At 2 a.m. I froze. Who comes to the door at 2 a.m? Caleb's phone buzzed in my hand. Not a text, a call. The caller ID said Birdie. She was calling him. Maybe she knew he was coming. Maybe she was worried he missed a check-in. The doorbell rang again, insistent. I heard Diane's door open. Maya? She called out, her voice groggy. Who is that? I didn't answer. I ran to the window and peered out. Blue and red lights flashed against the rain-slicked driveway. Police. I hadn't called them yet. Elias must have. He said he would wait for my signal, but maybe the bank transfer triggered something on his end. Or maybe he just got impatient. I heard Caleb roar from the bedroom. The phone. The transfer notification. It must have pushed through to his watch. The vibration woke him up. Maya, he sounded like an animal. I scrambled backward, backing into the desk. Caleb burst into the office. He was swaying, his eyes wild and bloodshot, holding onto the doorframe to stay upright. He was in his boxers, looking small and terrifying at the same time. You took it, he snarled. You took my money. He lunged at me. I dodged, but he was fast for a drugged man. His hand caught my hair. He yanked my head back. I screamed, "Give it back!" He screamed into my face, "Undo it!" I reached for the heavy stapler on the desk. I swung it backward blindly. It connected with his skull with a sickening crack. He staggered back, clutching his head. Blood began to seep through his fingers. Diane appeared in the doorway. She screamed, "My baby! You killed him!" She ran to him, shielding him with her body, looking at me with pure hatred. "You monster, I knew you were no good." I looked at them, the mother and the son, the enabler and the narcissist, clinging to each other in the ruins of their own making. The front door crashed open. "Police, show us your hands!" the hallway filled with uniformed officers. Elias walked in behind them, looking grim and satisfied. Caleb tried to stand up. "Arrest her!" he shouted, pointing a bloody finger at me. "She stole my money. She drugged me." "Officer," Elias said calmly, pointing at the open laptop on the desk. "That computer contains evidence of wire fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. The woman is the victim. She was securing the assets under legal counsel." The officer looked at the laptop. He looked at the safe. He looked at the bruised woman holding a stapler and the bleeding man screaming about money. "Caleb Vance?" the officer asked. "Yes," Caleb spat. "Arrest this bitch." "You're under arrest for grand larceny and fraud," the officer said, pulling out cuffs. Caleb's face went white. Diane began to wail, clawing at the officer's arm. "Don't touch him. He's a good boy." I watched as they wrestled Caleb to the ground. I watched as they cuffed Diane for obstruction when she wouldn't let go. I walked past them. I walked out the front door into the rain. Elias was waiting by his truck. "You got it?" he asked. I patted my pocket where the phone and the cash were. "I got it." He nodded. "Good. The lawyer is waiting. We have a restraining order ready to file." I looked back at the house. The lights were blazing. The neighbors were coming out onto their porches. I got into the truck. I didn't look back. Update. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized yesterday. Because Caleb is currently awaiting trial in federal prison, he didn't have much leverage to contest the asset division. The court ruled that the money I stole was actually a recovery of marital funds he had illegally siphoned. I got the house, which I immediately sold. I didn't want the memories. Diane had to move into a state-assisted living facility. I hear she tells the nurses that I'm a witch who put a curse on her son. I send her a card every month, just to be nice. As for Birdie, I found out she wasn't a villain. She was just another victim. He had told her he was a widower. When the news broke, she reached out to me. We met for coffee. She's keeping the baby. She named him Phoenix, which I thought was hilarious. I kept the hummingbird bracelet. I had the engraving ground off and replaced. It now reads, "Cage Open." I'm still paying off the debts he left in my name, but I'm doing it on my own terms. I have a new job. I have a new apartment. And for the first time in 5 years, when I come home, the silence doesn't feel like a threat. It feels like peace. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.